Thank you very much. So just to give a brief overview, so just on this economics, these budgets, these decision aids that we're working through right now, these are based on our simulated grazing grant. So this really isn't getting that much into the hay side of alfalfa, but really just looking at the grazing side, and that's kind of what our decision aid is based on currently. Our next grant we're going to be looking into those kind of three alternatives, the way actually people are actually using alfalfa, a little bit as hay, a little bit grazing, maybe a little bit of a stockpile forage as well. So whenever I started working with Kim and Jennifer and alfalfa, as an economist, I do a lot of marketing work, and I pulled up some of our hay marketing, and obviously there's a big void there, and I think this is going to be continue to be a theme whenever we look at the economics, because what we're seeing so far is if we get a crop, the economics is amazing. When we have those stand failures is whenever the economics is really gonna bite down hard on us. So that's what we really got to work on, getting producers that are focused on applying those basic principles that Kim talked about, those fundamentals, and really getting in and staying focused on the stands of alfalfa that we established. I have one producer in Florida that I'm currently working on that's not focusing on a hay side really, that's also utilizing it as a grazing in Lake City, Florida. This is whenever I started seeing the management that they were applying to this alfalfa production system in terms of the economics, it really got me thinking that we simply don't need to be thinking about establishing this stand in terms of dollars per beef cow. I'm always trying to look at dollars per acre, dollars per beef cow, all the different units that we can implement and really get some good data there whenever we're comparing these systems. But I don't like it in terms of dollars per beef cow, because we're not always going to be using it for our beef cows. There's also alternatives there, utilizing that high quality forage that Kim and Jennifer just showed us there in terms of 70% TDN and 22% crude protein during some of that baleage work that you did. So being able to utilize this system with cow-calf pairs or replacement heifers, with stockers if we're in a preconditioning program, or if we're developing some bulls, utilizing the forage for the best, forever the best category of cattle that we need to have those increased nutritional requirements there. So that's kind of how I'm seeing the economics. And in order to evaluate these economics, the way we're kind of looking at it on this grazing side of things is we're kind of comparing it to what kind of feed stuff, what kind of ration, what kind of total mixed ration would we be putting together to equal that same amount of energy and crude protein, get it fed, and get it in the animal. So kind of what we're looking at it on the alfalfa side, just looking at the forage economics of it, is making that comparison, and these are the types of things that we have to have in order to make that comparison. Obviously, throughout the Southeast, these data points are going to vary from farm to farm. The first thing we start to look for, obviously, is forage production throughout the year. We talked about put and take, adding animals there. If we look at forage production overall throughout the year, it helps us guide us in terms of what that economics might be for this alfalfa Bermuda grass mixture here. And yes, these are alfalfa Bermuda grass mixtures that we're looking at the economics of, not alfalfa stands by themselves. Level of forage utilization, I usually use 50. As you know, as we're getting started out, we probably don't want to take 50, but over the entire year there, a level of forage utilization of 50. Looking at consumption based on that simple ratio there, we've got our cost of forage production that we're going to do in our establishment budgets and our growing and grazing of alfalfa budgets. And then we come to the two really answers for me. It's forage cost per dry matter ton produced, and then how much did it cost to get us in the animal. And that's kind of dollars per dry matter ton produced is just standing out there in the field. When we get it in the animal, that dollars per dry matter ton consumed is economics. So that's really what we're focused on right now in terms of this alfalfa Bermuda grass mixture. Just a basic example, nothing to it, and I don't expect this to be our specific example for an alfalfa Bermuda grass, because we're not going to have 4,000, but it's really simple to understand. Is 4,000 pounds production, 50% utilization. That's a ton in the animal, 2,000 pounds. If we were spending about $200 cost of forage production per acre there, that would put us at 100 produced and 200 in the animal. We start thinking about what it costs us to produce hay. We got to be thinking about getting that hay in the animal if we're utilizing this on our own animals there. So that's just kind of the economics behind thinking about getting this alfalfa Bermuda grass mixture in the animal in this simulated grazing study. So whenever we're comparing this to our forage and versus feeding systems, I always have an animal scientist in the back that said I can get DDGs for $175 a ton, and that's just produced. That's not in the animal. That's not mixed up in a ration. I'm not going to feed just DDGs, so that brings in those other costs that we have to be thinking about if we're thinking about the feeding systems when we're comparing it to forage systems. So whenever I'm thinking about getting this alfalfa in the animals, we're thinking about that total cost in terms of the amount utilized or consumed, not just the purchase price or cost of production. We're thinking about actual economics. We're making sure whenever an economist does it, all the costs are incorporated. I include management fee in my budget because this is such a delicate crop that we have to stay focused on it. Every week, every few days, we've got to stay focused on this alfalfa crop because we can't have that stand failure. Incorporated in one of our newer budgets that we just updated, we started playing around with, what if 2 out of every 10 crops that we implemented in terms of alfalfa was a stand failure, 1 out of 10. We can work with that. When we get above that, that's where it really starts to hit hard. That's why we're really focusing on getting the basics and the implementation of this down. Whenever we make a comparison on this next slide, we're doing it in terms of just comparing our alfalfa Bermuda grass mixture, and I compared it to 66% TDN and 18% crude protein. That's what the alfalfa Bermuda grass mixture I compared it to, making a total mixed ration of similar quality. So whenever I'm thinking about the forage versus feeding systems, really making that comparison, not just focused on the forage side of things, I'm including these other things. So is that $175 a ton, is that delivered? Is that our commodity purchase price delivered to the farm? Does that include those transportation costs? I've got storage costs. I don't have to go out there and obviously there's no storage costs on alfalfa Bermuda grass in the field. There's no mixing costs. There's no feeding costs. There's going to be waste, whether we talk about the forage or we talk about the feed stuffs there. So I'm just trying to focus on getting that feed stuff or getting that forage in the animal. And that's the comparison we make, and it's really, really simple for us. If I'm focused on 3 keys, where am I seeing the greatest economic impact is obviously in staying longevity of alfalfa Bermuda grass mixtures. When we talk about the useful life, Dennis, talk to me a little bit about some of those really long-term stands that we have of alfalfa that are really surviving and thriving. Those are no-brainers for us to get that out there and get that planted. Forage production, very important for us to have that forage production and then get it in the animal. And then just cost control. I think one of the things we're focused on right now is putting this in some of our better acres. So making sure we get those stands established in some of our better fields. But as we go into this, cost control is going to be extremely important for us. But those first couple of years, spending that money, getting the stand established right, is going to be extremely important for us. There's actually 3 budgets now. The first one is just on establishing. Okay, just getting that first stand established of alfalfa in our Bermuda grass pastures. The second budget here is looking at estimated growing and grazing costs. Notice there's not a seed cost in this budget. You don't put seed costs in the growing and grazing budget. That's in the establishment. Establishment then funnels into growing and grazing. So this is just as we continue to move through the system, growing and grazing this alfalfa Bermuda grass field. So establishment costs, obviously, they're going to prorate it over the life of the stand. So this is just some of the things that we've got in our budgets as we're looking at alfalfa interseeded in this Bermuda grass. And again, the key here for me is dollars per dry matter ton produced, dollars per dry matter ton consumed. I've been looking at a little bit on cost of gain, but that's not really how majority of our producers are using this system as well. And then we looked at variable costs. These are our fixed costs that we're playing with. Why do we not have seed costs in a growing and grazing budget? Obviously, because we have a prorated share of establishment cost over the useful life of our stand here. This is just some of the basics that we're kind of really working on. If we're just threw in 20 acres as we're getting started, 5, 10, 20 acres. A lot of stands I've seen have been about 10 acres as they're getting used to this crop. 7,000 pounds of forage production per acre should not be a problem in an alfalfa Bermuda grass stand. 50% utilization, getting about 3,500 pounds forage per acre consumed, so getting that in the animal. And that leads us to kind of where, this is kind of my decision aid to try to help producers understand if we get this crop growing, all the successful combinations. So everything that's highlighted in yellow is a go. Whenever we're comparing this feed stuff to our total mixed ration of a similar quality of 66% TDN and 18% crude protein. So whenever economists calculate it, whenever we use all those costs, we can't produce this same ration for under $200 a ton. So anything, even at a 4,000 pound dry matter production level, if we've controlled our costs to $200 per acre on this alfalfa Bermuda grass mixture, and again, this was focused on a 3-year useful life. It was still in the go zone for us there. So all the way from 4,000 to 12,000, there are answers there to help us know that this is a very reliable forage crop that we could be implementing on our farm. A lot more successful cost of growing and grazing per dry matter ton consumed answers than we had unsuccessful there. So it's just getting that crop growing. If we've got 8,000 pounds of this mixture of a 50-50 blend here, then it's definitely a go for us.